Marcus Chen wiped the sweat from his forehead as he walked through the dimly lit corridors of Station Kepler 442, a massive trading hub floating in the darkness of deep space where hundreds of alien species came to buy, sell, and trade goods from across the galaxy. He had just finished unloading 3 tons of medical supplies from his small cargo hauler and was looking forward to a hot meal and maybe 6 hours of sleep before his next job began. The outer docking bays were always quiet at this hour, most traders preferring the central areas where security was tighter and the lighting actually worked properly. Marcus took a shortcut through Bay 47, an abandoned section that hadn't seen regular use in years, when he heard something that made him stop in his tracks. A soft, desperate chirping sound, like birds in distress, but somehow sadder and more urgent. He turned toward the sound and squinted into the shadows where his flashlight beam cut through the darkness. What he saw made his breath catch in his throat. A large alien lay crumpled against the metal wall, her crystalline skin dulled and cracked in several places where deep wounds leaked a silvery fluid that must have been blood. She had 6 limbs, 2 of which were curled protectively around 3 small creatures that couldn't have been bigger than house cats. The little ones were making those chirping sounds, their tiny bodies pressed against their mother's chest, and their bioluminescent patterns flickering weakly like dying stars. Marcus had seen plenty of aliens in his 5 years working the outer rim trade routes, but he had never seen this species before. Their bodies seemed to be made of living crystal, refracting what little light there was into pale rainbow patterns across the deck. "Hey, can you hear me?" Marcus called out softly as he approached, not wanting to startle them. The mother's eyes large and multifaceted like an insect's, but somehow expressing deep emotion focused on him with what looked like fear mixed with desperate hope. She tried to speak, but only managed a weak gurgling sound, and more of that silver blood leaked from the corner of her mouth. Marcus's mind raced through his options as he knelt beside them. He could call station security, but he already knew what they would say. Not our problem, not our species. Too much paperwork. And besides, the outer docking bays were outside their regular patrol zones anyway. He could try to find a medical facility that treated this species, but that would require credits he didn't have, and time this alien clearly didn't have either. Or he could do what every fiber of his human instinct was screaming at him to do: help them himself. Consequences be damned. "Okay, I'm going to help you," Marcus said firmly, more to himself than to the dying alien who probably couldn't understand Galactic Common anyway. "Just hold on." He activated his comm unit and sent a quick message to his ships. I prepped the medical bay. Emergency situation, unknown species, severe trauma. 3 juveniles also present. Then he carefully slid his arms under the mother's torso, trying to avoid the worst of her injuries. She was heavier than she looked, her crystalline structure dense and solid, but Marcus had loaded enough cargo containers to know how to lift with his legs. The 3 little ones immediately began chirping louder, their tiny clawed hands reaching for him as he lifted their mother, and Marcus felt his heart break a little at the sound of their distress. "Come on, little ones, follow me," he said softly, though he had no idea if they could understand. To his surprise, they did follow, scrambling after him on their multiple limbs, keeping as close to their mother as possible. The walk back to his ship felt like it took hours, even though it was probably only 10 minutes. And Marcus's arms screamed with the effort of carrying the alien mother while trying to move quickly enough to save her life, but carefully enough not to jostle her injuries. Other beings passed them in the corridors, a group of insectoid traders, a pair of reptilian merchants, even a station security officer, but none of them offered help. Most didn't even look twice. This was normal in the outer rim stations where everyone minded their own business, and helping strangers was considered foolish. At best and dangerous at worst, Marcus finally reached his ship. A beat-up cargo hauler he had named Second Chance, and the airlock hissed open as his AI recognized his approach. The three little ones hesitated at the entrance, chirping nervously at the unfamiliar environment. But when Marcus carried their mother inside, they bolted after him with surprising speed. The ship's medical bay was barely more than a glorified first aid station with a single examination table and some basic equipment. But it would have to do. Marcus gently laid the alien mother on the table and immediately began scanning her with his medical tricorder, a handheld device that could analyze most species' basic physiology. The readings were not good. Multiple fractures in her crystalline structure, severe internal bleeding, signs of deep tissue trauma from what looked like energy weapons. And her vital signs were dropping steadily. "What do you need?" Marcus muttered as he pulled up the tricorder's database of known alien species. Scrolling frantically through entries, nothing matched. This species wasn't in the system, which meant he had no idea what kind of medical treatment would help versus what might kill her. Three little ones had climbed onto the examination table and were pressing themselves against their mother, their chirping now a constant, heartbroken sound that made Marcus's chest tight. He grabbed his emergency medical kit and pulled out dermal regenerators, coagulation agents, and broad-spectrum antibiotics that worked on most carbon-based life forms. "I'm going to try something," he said, mostly to calm himself down. "If you can understand me, I'm sorry if this hurts, but I have to stop the bleeding." He applied the coagulation foam to her worst wounds, watching as it hissed and bubbled against her crystalline skin. For a terrible moment, nothing happened, and Marcus thought he had just made things worse. Then the silvery blood flow slowed, the foam bonding with her alien biology in a way it was never designed to do. Okay, that's working." Marcus breathed out in relief. He worked steadily for the next hour, sealing wounds, stabilizing fractures with medical tape and splints designed for human bones, but adapted on the fly, and administering carefully measured doses of pain medication that he hoped wouldn't poison her. Mother drifted in and out of consciousness, occasionally whispering something in a language that sounded like wind chimes and crystal bells, her multifaceted eyes tracking Marcus's movements with what he desperately hoped was gratitude and not terror. The three little ones never left her side, but gradually their chirping changed from distress to something softer, more curious. One of them, slightly smaller than the others, with a distinctive blue tint to its crystalline skin, reached out a tiny hand and touched Marcus's arm. While he worked, the touch was cool and smooth, like touching polished glass, and Marcus felt a strange tingling sensation where the little one made contact. "Hey there, little guy," Marcus said softly, pausing in his work to look at the small alien. "It's okay. I'm helping your mama." The little one tilted its head, its bioluminescent patterns pulsing gently, and Marcus could have sworn it understood him on some level by the time he finished all he could do with his limited supplies. Marcus was exhausted, and the alien mother had slipped into what he hoped was healing sleep rather than something worse. He set up monitoring equipment to track her vital signs and then slumped into a chair beside the examination table. The three little ones were still clustered around their mother, but now they kept glancing at Marcus, their large eyes reflecting the soft lights of the medical bay. "We're going to get through this," Marcus told them, "and maybe himself too. I don't know who you are or where you came from, but nobody dies on my watch, not if I can help it." One of the little ones chirped softly, almost like it was answering him, and Marcus felt a smile tug at his exhausted face. Despite everything, he had no idea what he had just gotten himself into. But he knew one thing for certain: he couldn't have walked away, not when they needed help so desperately. That was the thing about being human that other species never seemed to understand. Sometimes You helped not because it was smart or profitable or even safe, but simply because it was the right thing to do. Marcus woke to the sound of chirping and for a confused moment thought he was back on Earth listening to birds outside his childhood bedroom window before reality crashed back and he remembered where he was and why. Every muscle in his body ached. The three little aliens were clustered at the edge of his bunk, their bioluminescent patterns pulsing in what seemed like agitation or maybe hunger. Marcus had no idea, which he sat up quickly and checked the medical bay monitors from the wall panel near his quarters. Relief flooding through him when he saw the alien mother's vital signs had stabilized overnight. She was still unconscious, but no longer in immediate danger of dying. "Okay, little ones, let's check on your mama," Marcus said as he pulled on a clean shirt and headed to the medical bay with all three aliens following close behind like ducklings. When he entered, the mother's eyes were actually open, all six of them, arranged in 2 rows across her elongated face, and they tracked his movement with sharp intelligence. She tried to sit up, but Marcus quickly moved forward, holding up his hands in what he hoped was a universal gesture for "Stay put. Easy there. You're badly hurt, and you need to rest," he said slowly and clearly to his surprise. She responded in heavily accented but understandable Galactic common, her voice like crystal chimes. "My children, where? They're right here. Safe and healthy," Marcus assured her as the 3 little ones scrambled onto the examination table and pressed themselves against her torso. Chirping excitedly, the mother's entire body seemed to relax and her crystalline skin brightened slightly as she curled her limbs protectively around them. And Marcus saw silvery tears leak from her multifaceted eyes. "Thank you," she whispered, the words barely audible. Human thank you. No one else stopped. "Don't try to talk too much. You need to conserve your strength," Marcus said gently. "Can you tell me what happened? And what species you are, so I can get you proper medical help?" Over the next several minutes, speaking in short, pained bursts, the alien mother told him her story. Her name was Saralyn, and she was a Valorian, a species from the far side of the galaxy that Marcus had never encountered before. She had been traveling to an important diplomatic summit with her 3 children, whom she had not yet formally named, as was tradition in her culture. When her ship was attacked by pirates near this sector, they had stolen everything valuable, stripped her ship for parts, beaten her nearly to death when she fought back, and left her and her children to die in that abandoned docking bay. "Station security," I begged. They said not their problem. Saralyn's voice broke on the last words. Marcus felt anger burn hot in his chest at the casual cruelty of it, but he pushed it down and focused on what mattered now. "Well, it's my problem now, and we're going to fix this." He pulled up a database search on Valorian physiology and medical requirements. Relieved to finally have a name to work with, what he found made his stomach sink. Valorians required specialized crystalline regeneration therapy that use rare minerals and specific light frequencies, treatments that would cost more credits than Marcus made in 6 months. The 3 little ones needed constant physical contact with caregivers and a diet rich in specific mineral compounds that had to be precisely balanced, or they would suffer developmental damage. None of this was available on Station Kepler 442, and shipping it in would cost even more. Marcus stared at the numbers on his screen and made a decision that he knew was probably stupid, but felt completely right. He would liquidate everything, his savings, his next 3 cargo contracts that he would have to break, even some of his ship's non-essential equipment, whatever it took. "I'll be back in a few hours," he told Saralyn. "I need to arrange some things, but don't worry, we're going to get you what you need." The next week blurred into exhausting routine that pushed Marcus to his absolute limits. He spent his days hunting down black market medical suppliers who could provide the crystalline regeneration equipment, negotiating prices that made him wince, breaking contracts and burning professional bridges to free up credits, and slowly, painfully watching his entire financial safety net disappear. He spent his nights caring for Sarah Lynn and the three little ones. The children, Marcus started calling them Pip, the smallest with blue-tinted skin, Trill, the middle one with a distinctive trill in its chirp, and Zix, the boldest, who was always exploring. Needed constant attention. Valorian young apparently required physical contact almost continuously, or they became distressed, their bioluminescent patterns flickering erratically and their chirping becoming sharp and panicked. Marcus solved this by fashioning a carrier harness from cargo straps that allowed him to carry all three of them against his chest while he worked, their small bodies warm against him and their chirping eventually settling into a contented rhythm. The mineral supplements they required were expensive and had to be prepared fresh, ground into a paste and mixed with a protein gel that Marcus learned to make through trial and error after Pip rejected the first 5 batches by spitting them back at him. Sarah Lynn watched all of this from the medical bed where she remained while the phase regeneration therapy slowly repaired her crystalline structure. Marcus could see the emotions playing across her alien features: gratitude, confusion, wonder, and something else he couldn't quite identify. Why? She asked him one evening after he had just finished coaxing all 3 children to eat their supplements, a process that had taken nearly an hour. Why help us? Humans are not wealthy. You sacrifice much. Why? Marcus looked down at the 3 little ones who had curled up in his lap after eating, their bioluminescent patterns pulsing in sync with his heartbeat in a way that the medical I had told him indicated deep bonding. Because you needed help and no one else would get it, he said simply. That's reason enough. But your species, you live such short lives. This cost. Money comes and goes. Marcus shrugged. I can always take more cargo runs, pick up extra work, rebuild my savings eventually. He didn't mention that he had no idea how he was going to pay for next month's stocking fees, or that he was now eating ration bars for every meal, because the children's supplements took priority. Sarah Lynn was silent for a long moment, her crystalline structure refracting the soft lights of the medical bay into dancing patterns on the walls. Valorians have legends, she said quietly, about beings who help without expectation, who give freely. We thought them myths, fantasy stories for children. Well, I'm no legend, Marcus laughed. Just a guy who couldn't walk away. 2 weeks into this new reality, a Valorian trader arrived at the station, and word somehow reached Sarah Lynn about her presence. The trader was an elderly female named Kesserin, who nearly collapsed when she saw Sarah Lynn alive. Child! Kesserin gasped in her own language before switching to Galactic Common. The clans believe you dead. We mourned your mate, High Commander Krulax. He has already begun succession rituals. Marcus watched the reunion quietly from the doorway as Kesserin examined Sarah Lynn and the children with shaking hands, her crystalline skin pulsing with emotions that humans couldn't fully read. You must return home immediately, Kesserin insisted. I will contact your clan. They will send ships. It will take weeks for them to arrive here, Sarah Lynn said softly. This sector is far from our space, and Kesserin, she gestured to Marcus. This human saved us, paid for our treatment, cared for my children when no one else would help. Kesserin turned to look at Marcus properly for the first time, and her multiple eyes widened in what might have been shock. A human did this? Why? That seems to be the question everyone asks, Marcus said with a tired smile. Kesserin studied him for a long moment and then said something in rapid Valorian that made Sarah Lynn's breath catch. What? Marcus asked. What did she say? Sarah Lynn looked at him with an expression he was starting to recognize as deep concern. She says the children have bonded with you. Their bioluminescent patterns sync to your heartbeat. They respond to your voice. They seek your touch above all others. Is that bad? Marcus asked, confused. In Valorian culture, Sarah Lynn spoke slowly, choosing her words carefully. When young ones bond so completely with a protector who saved them and their mother, it is called Kishara. It means, she struggled with the translation, father bond. But deeper it means they have chosen you as family permanently. Marcus looked down at Pip, Trill, and Zix, who were playing with his bootlaces, chirping happily, completely oblivious to the weight of what was being discussed. So, what does that mean exactly? He asked. It means, Sarlin's voice was barely a whisper, they will never truly bond with anyone else. You are their father now, in all ways that matter and by our law and custom. I must honor that bond. Marcus should have been terrified by this revelation. Should have been planning how to carefully separate himself from these aliens and return to his simple cargo hollow life. Instead, he felt something warm and fierce and protective bloom in his chest as Pip looked up at him and chirped, reaching tiny hands toward him. Well then, Marcus said quietly, I guess I'm a father now. The weeks that followed were both the hardest and strangest of Marcus's life. A bizarre new reality where he found himself, learning to be a father to 3 alien children while simultaneously trying to keep his cargo business from completely collapsing. His recovery was progressing well thanks to the crystalline regeneration therapy that had cost Marcus nearly everything he owned. But she was still too weak to care for the triplets by herself, which meant Marcus continued to be their primary caregiver. He learned that Pip was gentle and thoughtful, often sitting quietly and watching everything with those large, multifaceted eyes. Absorbing the world around him like a sponge. Trill was energetic and vocal, always chirping and trilling, always the first to explore new areas of the ship or investigate strange sound. Shix was the troublemaker, clever and bold, constantly getting into things she shouldn't. Marcus had caught her trying to rewire his ship's control panel twice now, and she was only a few months old. They followed him everywhere, their tiny clawed feet clicking on the metal floors of his ship, their chirping becoming a constant background sound that Marcus realized he would miss if it ever stopped. Other traders and station residents had started noticing his unusual situation, and reactions varied wildly. Some laughed at him. Look at the human playing daddy to crystal bugs. A Krillian merchant had sneered. What's next? You gonna adopt a Gorthian slime mold too? Others were confused. Why would you waste resources on aliens that aren't even your species? A fellow human trader asked you genuinely. There are human orphans who need help, but a very few looked at him with something that might have been respect or admiration. Though they never said anything directly, Marcus didn't care what anyone thought, because every time he looked at Pip, Trill, and Zix, he saw 3 innocent lives that would have died in that docking bay if he had walked past. And that was all the justification he needed one evening. After Marcus had finally gotten all 3 children to sleep in a nest of blankets he had arranged in a corner of his quarters, Sarah Lynn called him to the medical bay, where she was sitting up for the first time in days. Marcus, she began, and he noticed she was using his name instead of just saying human, like she had at first. We need to speak about the future, about the children, about what happens when my clan arrives. Marcus sat down across from her, suddenly nervous. Okay, I'm listening. In Valorian culture, the Kishara bond, the father bond the children have formed with you, it is sacred and legally binding. Sarah Lynn explained carefully. But you must understand what this means. Valorians live for 3 centuries or more, you humans. You live barely 1 century. I know my lifespan is short compared to most species. Marcus said quietly, I've made peace with that. But have you made peace with the fact that you will die when these children are still young? Sarah Lynn's voice was gentle, but her words cut deep. That they will love you and lose you before they are even fully grown? That I will have to watch you age and die while I am still in my prime? Marcus hadn't thought about it in those terms, and the realization hit him hard. He would be old or dead before Pip, Trill, and Zix reached adulthood. He would miss so much of their lives. Their accomplishments, their futures. He started, and then stopped. Not sure what to say. There is a possibility, Sarah Lynn said slowly, watching him carefully. A procedure that some species undergo genetic enhancement that extends the lifespan. It can allow you to live as long as a Valorian, perhaps longer. Marcus's head snapped up. That's possible? Yes, but it is dangerous for humans. Your biology is not designed for such modifications. There is perhaps a 30% chance you would not survive the procedure. Sarah Lynn's crystalline skin dimmed with worry. And even if you survive, you would be changed. Your body would be different. You would live for centuries, watching everyone you knew on Earth grow old and die. Can I think about it? Marcus asked, his mind spinning. Of course, Sarah Lynn said, but there is something else we must discuss, something more immediate. She took a deep breath, and her bioluminescent patterns pulsed with what Marcus had learned meant. She was nervous or uncertain. Marcus, I must be honest with you about Valorian culture, about my mating bond with High Commander Krellax. Over the next hour, Sarah Lynn explained the complex social structures of Valorian nobility. She had been bonded to Krellax in a political arrangement between powerful clans, a union designed to strengthen alliances and produce heirs. There was no love in their relationship. Krellax was a military commander who viewed his children as future soldiers to train, not as beings to nurture and love. He had been absent for most of their early development, delegating their care to servants. And Sarah Lynn had been traveling alone to the diplomatic summit, precisely to escape his cold domination for a while. He will come here, she said softly, when he learns I am alive. He will come with ships and warriors, and he will demand we return to Valoria immediately. And the children? Marcus asked, thinking of Pip's gentle curiosity, Trill's joyful energy, Zix's clever mischief. Would they be happy with him? No, Sarah Lynn admitted, and her voice held deep sadness. He would see their bond with you as weakness, something to be trained out of them. He would try to make them forget you, to make them into warriors and politicians with no room for love or joy. Marcus felt anger rising in him, hot and fierce. That's not going to happen, Marcus. He is a high commander. He has legal rights under Valorian law. He is their father. But they've bonded with me, Marcus argued. You said the Kishar bond is sacred. It is. But it has never been tested with an alien species. Sarah Lynn explained. There will be challenges, questions about whether a human can truly be considered a guardian under our law. Then I'll fight for them, Marcus said firmly. I don't care about Valorian law or human law or any law. Those kids need someone who actually loves them. And if that someone is me, then I'm not letting anyone take them away. Sarah Lynn stared at him for a long moment, and then something remarkable happened. Her entire crystalline body began to glow. Bright and beautiful, colors shifting through her structure and patterns Marcus had never seen before. What's happening? He asked, worried he had upset her. Humans, Sarah Lynn laughed. And it was the first time he had heard her laugh. A sound like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. You are all insane and wonderful and completely unpredictable. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Marcus, she said seriously, her glow dimming to something softer. I want to ask you something, and I need you to truly consider before answering. Would you consent to a formal guardianship bond under Valorian law? It would make you legally my co-parent equal in all decisions regarding the children. It would give you rights that even Krellax could not easily challenge. What about you? Marcus asked, What would that mean for you? It would mean I choose you over my bonded mate. It would mean declaring to all of Valoria that a human has proven himself a better father than one of our own high commanders. It would be scandalous and controversial, and would likely damage my clan's political standing. Saralyn paused and then added quietly, it would also mean I would stay here with you, helping to raise our children together. Because Valorian law requires both guardians to be present during the children's developmental years. Marcus processed this information carefully. She was offering to give up her entire life, her political position, her place in her own society, just to ensure her children would be loved and protected. She was choosing him, a poor human cargo hauler who had nothing to offer except genuine care over a powerful noble who could give them wealth and status. Why would you do all that? He asked. Because I have watched you with them for these weeks. Saralyn said simply, I have seen you sacrifice everything, your money, your business, your sleep, your comfort, all without hesitation. I have seen you sing them to sleep with strange human songs, seen you create games to make them laugh, seen you hold them when they cry. She paused, and her voice became softer. Krelax never once held them like that, never sang to them or played with them or sacrificed anything for their happiness. And I realized something watching you, Marcus Chun. I realized that parenthood is not about biology or law or political alliances. It is about love and sacrifice and being present. And you think I can do that? Marcus asked, suddenly feeling the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. I know you can, Saralyn said with absolute certainty. Because you already have been. Marcus looked toward his quarters where Pip, Trill, and Zix were sleeping, their soft chirping audible even through the walls. And he thought about the lifespan extension procedure with its dangerous 30% mortality rate. He thought about living for 3 centuries, about watching the children grow up, about being there for every moment of their long lives. He thought about the alternative, walking away, leaving them to a father who would never truly love them, letting them grow up believing that the person who saved them had abandoned them. The choice was actually easy. Yes, Marcus said, I'll do the guardianship bond, and I'll do the lifespan extension procedure too. I want to be there for them. For all of it, no matter how long it takes. Saralyn's entire body glowed again, brilliant and beautiful. Then we will face whatever comes together as co-parents, as partners in their care, as family, Marcus added. Yes, Saralyn agreed softly, as family. The Valorian fleet arrived 3 weeks later with all the subtlety of a meteor strike. A dozen warships that dwarfed every other vessel at station, Kepler 442, and sent the station's administrators into a panic of diplomatic protocols and emergency preparations. Marcus watched from his ship's viewport as the massive crystalline vessels took up formation around the station, their hulls refracting starlight into rainbow patterns that would have been beautiful if they weren't so clearly threatening. He's here, Saralyn said quietly from behind him, and Marcus heard the tension in her voice. Are you ready for this? No, Marcus admitted, but I'm doing it anyway. The formal meeting was arranged in one of the station's largest conference halls, a space normally used for trade negotiations, but now filled with Valorian nobles, their bodyguards, station officials who suddenly cared very much about the aliens they had ignored weeks ago, and several news drones from various galactic media outlets. High Commander Krelax entered like a force of nature. He stood nearly 8 feet tall even for a Valorian, his crystalline structure a deep, almost black color that seemed to absorb light rather than refract it, and his bioluminescent patterns pulsed with what Marcus had learned meant anger barely held in check. Saralyn. Krelax's voice was deep and resonant, like stones grinding together. I was told you were dead. We held mourning ceremonies, and now I find you alive, hiding on this pathetic station with our offspring. I was not hiding, Sarah Lynn replied. Her own voice, steady despite the clear power imbalance. I was recovering from injuries sustained when pirates attacked my ship, injuries that would have killed me and the children, if not for. Yes. I have heard about your human pet, Krellax interrupted, his multifaceted eyes finding Marcus in the crowd. How much did you pay him to play caretaker? I will reimburse his expenses, and then we will return home where we belong. I didn't ask for payment. Marcus spoke up before Sarah Lynn could respond, stepping forward even though every survival instinct told him to stay back. And I'm not a pet, I'm their guardian. Legally recognized under Valorian law through the Kishara bond. The conference hall erupted in shocked chatter from the Valorian nobles, and Marcus heard fragments of conversation. Impossible. A human? Unprecedented. Scandalous. Krellax's bioluminescent patterns flared bright red, a color Marcus had learned meant rage. You dare claim guardianship? You, a primitive mammal whose species has barely left your own star system. You whose lifespan is barely a flicker compared to ours? I dare because those children bonded with me, Marcus said, keeping his voice level even though his heart was racing. Because when they needed help, I was there. Where were you? I was commanding fleets in defense of our territory. Krellax roared. I was ensuring the safety and prosperity of our entire civilization while you were what? Hauling cargo like a common laborer? I was saving your mate and children while everyone else on this station walked past them dying. Marcus shot back. I was holding them while they cried, feeding them, keeping them safe, being a father while you were too busy being a commander. Krellax moved with shocking speed for someone so large, crossing the space between them in 2 strides. Looming over Marcus with clear intent to intimidate, you will release your false claim to guardianship. You will accept payment for your services, and you will never contact my family again, Krellax said, his voice low and dangerous. Or I will ensure you regret every moment of this foolish human compassion. No, the word came not from Marcus but from Sarah Lynn. And when she spoke again, her voice carried an authority that Marcus had never heard from her before. Krellax, I am formally dissolving our political bond and declaring Marcus Chen as co-guardian of our children under the sacred law of Kishara. The conference hall went completely silent. You cannot. Krellax started. I can and I have. Sarah Lynn interrupted. The Kishara bond supersedes mate bonds when the welfare of children is at stake. This is our most ancient law, written in the first days of our civilization. On what grounds do you claim this human has formed Kishara with our offspring? Krellax demanded. They are infants. They would bond with anyone who fed them. Then let the tribunal decide. Sarah Lynn challenged. Call the judges, present your case. But know that I will testify that this human has shown more love, more sacrifice, and more dedication to our children in 3 weeks than you have shown in their entire lives. Krellax's crystalline structures seemed to darken even further, and for a moment, Marcus thought the High Commander might attack them both. But instead he turned sharply and addressed the crowd. So be it. I call for an official tribunal under the ancient laws. Let these esteemed judges determine whether a human is capable of raising Valorian heirs over the next 2 days. The station's largest courtroom was prepared for what was being called the most unprecedented legal case in modern Valorian history. 3 judges were brought in, ancient Valorians whose crystalline structures had turned nearly white with age. Beings who had lived through centuries and seen the rise and fall of countless political alliances. Marcus barely slept during the preparation period, spending every free moment with Pip, Trill, and Zix, trying to memorize the weight of them in his arms, the sound of their chirping, the way their bioluminescent patterns pulsed when they were happy. Kept thinking about the possibility that he might lose them, that some judge would decide a human wasn't qualified to be their father. And the thought made his chest physically ache. The tribunal began at dawn, The courtroom was packed with observers, Valorians, other alien species, even a delegation of humans who had heard about the case and come to see one of their own challenging an alien. High Commander, the three judges, sat on an elevated platform, their ancient faces impassive as they reviewed documents and consulted in low voice. Krellas, legal representative, spoke first, a smooth-talking noble who laid out their case with practiced precision. Humans were too short-lived to provide stable parenting, too emotionally volatile, too biologically different to understand Valorian needs, too primitive in their culture and technology. Furthermore, the representative concluded, this human has no wealth, no political standing, no ability to provide the education and opportunities that Valorian heirs deserve. He is, in essence, a poor cargo hauler who happened to be in the right place at the right time, nothing more. Then it was their turn. Saralyn stood and spoke with quiet dignity about finding Marcus in that docking bay, about his immediate action when others had refused to help, about his financial sacrifice and constant care. He sold everything he owned. She told the judges. He broke business contracts, destroyed his professional reputation, and spent every credit to save beings he had never met, beings who were not his species, not his responsibility, and he did this expecting nothing in return. But the most powerful testimony came from an unexpected source. The medical AI from Marcus's ship had been subpoenaed to provide data, and it presented 3 weeks of continuous monitoring that showed the children's bioluminescent patterns, their stress levels, their behavioral responses. The synchronization is unprecedented, the AI stated in its flat, emotionless voice. The children's heartbeats match Marcus Chun's when in proximity. Their stress hormones dropped to 0 in his presence. Their cognitive development has accelerated beyond normal parameters due to the constant stimulation and attention he provides. The AI paused and then added, I have medical records of High Commander Krelak's interactions with the children from before the attack. There is no synchronization, elevated stress responses, and delayed cognitive development during that period. The contrast is statistically significant. Krelak's crystalline structure flared red, but he said nothing. Judges called for a recess and then asked to see the children directly. Marcus brought Pip, Trill, and Zix into the courtroom, all three riding in the carrier harness he had made. And the moment they saw Krelak's, they began chirping in distress, their patterns flickering with fear. But when Marcus spoke softly to them, they immediately calmed, their patterns syncing to his heartbeat. And Pip reached up to touch his face with one tiny hand. Dama. Pip chirped clearly. It was his first recognizable word, and it was his attempt at saying Daddy. The courtroom erupted in shocked gasps. Silence. The lead judge commanded, and then addressed Marcus directly. Human, why did you help these aliens? Speak honestly. Marcus looked down at Pip, Trill, and Zix, then back at the judges. Because they needed someone and nobody else cared. Because walking past beings in distress, especially children, that's not something I can do and still call myself human. Because compassion isn't about what's practical or profitable. It's about recognizing suffering and doing something about it. He paused and then added, and if that makes me unqualified to raise them, if caring too much is a weakness in your eyes, then maybe your laws need to change, because these kids deserve someone who loves them more than status or politics or tradition. They deserve someone who would sacrifice everything just to see them happy, and that's me, the lead. Judge was silent for a long moment, and then said something that would change everything. We will deliberate and announce our decision tomorrow. That night Marcus held all three children close, singing them earth lullabies while trying not to think about the possibility that tomorrow might be the last time he would ever hold them. The courtroom was even more crowded the next morning. News of the unprecedented case having spread across multiple sectors, and beings from dozens of species had come to witness what many were calling a defining moment in interspecies relations. Marcus sat with Sarah Lynn and the children, trying to keep his hands from shaking as the three ancient judges entered and took their positions. Lead judge, an elderly Valorian whose crystalline structure was almost pure white with age, surveyed the assembled crowd with eyes that had seen centuries of history before speaking. This tribunal has been asked to determine whether a human named Marcus Chun can be recognized as legal guardian to Valorian children under the sacred law of Kishara. The judge's voice was clear despite her obvious age. We have reviewed all testimony, examined all evidence, and consulted our oldest legal precedents. She paused, and Marcus felt his heart hammering so hard he thought everyone in the room must be able to hear it. The law of Kishara was established in the earliest days of our civilization to ensure that children would always be cared for by those who loved them most, regardless of clan politics or social status. The judge continued, "It was created because our ancestors understood that biological parentage alone does not make one a true parent, that honor is earned through sacrifice, through presence, through unconditional love." Marcus dared to hope. However, the judge said, and Marcus's hope plummeted, "We must also consider the practical reality that this human's natural lifespan would mean these children would lose their guardian while still young. This presents a significant concern. Therefore," the lead judge announced, "this tribunal makes the following ruling. We recognize Marcus Chun's Kishara bond with the children and grant him full legal guardianship rights equal to the biological mother." The courtroom exploded with reactions, gasps, shouts, the clicking and chirping of various alien species expressing shock. "However," the judge raised her voice over the chaos, "we require that Marcus Chun undergo genetic lifespan enhancement to match Valorian longevity. Only then can we be certain he will be present for the entirety of the children's developmental years as our law requires." She turned to Marcus directly. "Do you understand that this procedure carries significant risk to your life? That approximately 30% of humans do not survive the enhancement? And that if you proceed, you will be forever changed, living centuries beyond your species' normal span." Marcus stood, lifting Pip, Trill, and Zix in his arms. "I understand, and I accept. These are my children now, and I'll do whatever it takes to be there for them. Then, this tribunal grants you 3 days to prepare," the judge declared, "after which the procedure will be performed under medical supervision. If you survive, your guardianship will be permanent and legally unassailable." She struck her gavel, and the room erupted again. But Marcus barely heard it because Sarah Lynn was hugging him, and the children were chirping excitedly, and somewhere in the chaos, he heard Krellex's roar of fury. But it didn't matter anymore. The High Commander had lost the next 3 days passed in a blur of medical preparations, legal paperwork, finalizing the guardianship pending the procedure's success, and media attention that Marcus tried desperately to ignore. What he focused on was time with the children, teaching Trill to stack blocks, watching Pip examine everything with careful curiosity, laughing when Zix managed to disassemble his cum unit yet again on the morning of the procedure. Marcus said goodbye to Sarah Lynn and the children, trying to be brave, even though he was terrified. "If I don't make it," he started, but Sarah Lynn pressed a crystalline hand to his mouth. "You will make it," she said firmly. "You have to, because we need you. I need you." The procedure itself was agony, genetic restructuring at the cellular level, his DNA being rewritten to accept modifications that would extend his telomeres, enhance his cellular repair, fundamentally alter what it meant to be human. Marcus drifted in and out of consciousness for 2 days. His fever spiking so high the medical staff worried his brain would be damaged. His body rejecting and then accepting the changes in waves of pain. But on the 3rd day, he opened his eyes to see Sarah Lynn sitting beside his bed with all 3 children in her arms. And the first thing he heard was their joyful chirping. "Dama!" Pip called out, and Marcus felt tears streaming down his face because he had made it. He would get to see them grow up after all. The recovery took 2 weeks, and when Marcus finally looked at himself in a mirror, he could see subtle changes. His eyes had a faint crystalline quality now. His skin seemed to refract light slightly. His entire cellular structure humming with enhanced vitality. "You'll live for 300 years now," the doctor told him. "Maybe longer." The procedure worked better than we expected. Marcus thought about all that time, all those years stretching ahead. And instead of being overwhelmed, he felt grateful for every moment he would get to spend with his children. 10 years past Station Kepler 442 had changed dramatically in that decade. Transformed from a rough trading hub where beings minded their own business into something quite different. The catalyst for that change stood at the entrance to a sprawling complex that had once been abandoned cargo bays but was now the Kishara House, an interspecies orphanage that Marcus and Sarah Lynn had founded with help from donations that had poured in after the trial. Remember to check their medical requirements carefully, Marcus was telling a young Krillian volunteer, his voice patient and kind. "Each species has different needs, and we need to make sure every child gets exactly what they require." The volunteer nodded enthusiastically. She was one of dozens of beings from various species who now worked at Kishara House. Inspired by the story of a human who had risked everything for alien children inside the complex, nearly 50 children from 20 different species were being cared for. Refugees, orphans, abandoned young ones who had nowhere else to go. Some would eventually be reunited with their families. Others would be adopted. But all of them received love, safety, and the message that they mattered. "Dama!" A familiar voice called out, and Marcus turned to see Pip approaching. No longer the tiny chirping infant, but a young Valorian teenager. His crystalline structure now deep blue with patterns of gold running through it. "The Andorian refugees just arrived, and their children are frightened. Can you come talk to them?" "Of course," Marcus said. Following his eldest son toward the reception area, Pip had grown into a gentle soul with a gift for diplomacy, able to comfort distressed beings with just his presence and soft words. Tro came running from another direction, her crystalline structure bright red with orange patterns, her energy still boundless even as a teenager. "Dad! Dad!" The new medical equipment arrived, and Zix is already taking it apart to see how it works. "Should I stop her?" Marcus laughed. "Probably. Before she breaks something expensive, I'll go handle it." He found Zix in the medical bay surrounded by components of what had been a state-of-the-art diagnostic scanner. Her crystalline structure a unique purple color that no other Valorian had. Her multiple hands working with tools as she carefully examined each part. "Zix, we talked about this," Marcus said with exaggerated exasperation. "You can't disassemble brand new equipment before we've even used it." "But Dad, look." Zix's eyes were bright with excitement. "I figured out how to modify it to work on 15 more species than it was originally designed for. I just need to reconfigure the sensors and..." Okay. Marcus relented because Zix's engineering genius had already improved half the equipment in Kishara House. "But you're putting it back together yourself and testing it thoroughly before we use it on any children. Deal?" "Deal." Zix chirped happily. Marcus watched his 3 children, so different, but all brilliant in their own ways. All kind and compassionate, because they had learned from watching him and Sarah Lynn and felt overwhelming pride. "You're smiling again," Sarah Lynn said. Appearing beside him, she had aged barely at all in 10 years, while Marcus now had silver threading through his hair. Though thanks to the genetic enhancement, he was still strong and healthy with centuries ahead of him. "I was just thinking about that day in the docking bay," Marcus admitted. "How I almost walked past because it wasn't my problem." "But you didn't," Sarah Lynn said softly, taking his hand in her crystalline one. "And because you didn't, all of this exists. 50 children have homes now. Hundreds more have been helped over the years. You changed everything." "Marcus, we changed everything," he corrected. "Me. The kids, we all did this together." A commotion at the entrance made them both turn. A new group of refugees was arriving, a species Marcus didn't recognize. Their bodies covered in fur with multiple eyes. And they had 3 small children with them who looked injured and terrified. Station security was there too. But instead of turning the refugees away like they would have years ago, the officers were actually helping them, carrying supplies, calling for medical assistance. Times have changed, Sarah Lynn observed. People are different now, because they saw that compassion works. Marcus said that helping others doesn't make you weak, it makes everyone stronger. He started walking toward the new refugees, ready to welcome them and offer assistance, when Pip appeared at his side. "Dad, before you go, I wanted to ask you something." Pip's voice was serious. "Why did you help us that day? You could have walked away. Your life would have been simpler, safer. Why?"